All right, it is 7 p.m. I am calling to order a meeting of the Human Affairs Committee, Monday, October 21st, here in the Aldermanic Chamber at 7 p.m. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance.
Alderman Lopez.
I'm here.
Alderman Kelly is here. Alderman Timmons. Alderman Senate. Alderman Thibodeau.
Here.
As Alderman Senate is typically our clerk, I have Alderman Kelly, who's our vice chair, filling in. So thank you, Alderman Kelly.
Haven't done this in a bit. Do we have any also in attendance? I think we're good. Okay.
We do have city staff to present on the Homeland Security grant. But let's start with public comment. Any members of the public wishing to make comment on items expected to be acted on this evening, please step forward to the mic, give your name and address for the record.
Hello again, board. My name is Nick Scalera here. Live at 2 Paddington Place here in Nashua. I'm talking again to speak about R24-075, the ceasefire resolution. Well, I want to start off talking about this resolution and why I believe we need to pass it. Specifically for the last line, the last, I guess, sentence fragment in the title of the resolution that responds to accountability for military equipment used by international allies. If any amendment should be made to this resolution, I don't think there necessarily needs to be, but if there is any, I think it should now read accountability for military equipment made in Nashua by international allies. As some of us may know, in the news recently, we are no longer complicit, we are now inherently implicit and connected to this conflict. The new THAAD, T-H-A-A-D missile defense battery that was recently shipped to Israel along with 100 active duty U.S. service men and women was made right here in Nashua, New Hampshire by BAE Systems. The software was created by Lockheed Martin. The hardware was manufactured here in Nashua, New Hampshire. We are now inherently connected to this conflict. There's no reason, no scapegoat to hide behind that Nashua is not connected. Our products of our city are now actively involved in this conflict. They are now, although suspectedly in a defensive posture, they are now a target. 100 servicemen are now on the ground ready to defend Israel and ready to be attacked. And that will lead us into a larger war. Can we not recognize how this is bad? Furthermore, talking of military aid while 400,000 are starving in North Gaza after a 20-day siege has been levied against the north of the Strip is just unconscionable. Just this past couple of weeks, we saw another bombing in Deir al-Balah of Shaban al-Dalou and his mother, who were burned alive with IVs still in their arms. This past week, his younger brother, and now today, his younger sister, have also died because of their wounds. They were in the hospital to begin with after being in another explosion caused by another American-made munition and then were killed by another. I can't understand how we can sit here and think that we are innocent in this. Weapons that have been made by Americans in America are now being used to kill innocent men, women, and children. That is unconscionable on any sort of moral level, but especially on a humanistic level, on an American law level. We have the responsibility, as this lays out, to follow American and international law in the usage of offensive military weapons. We are not doing that. Anthony Blinken has stated as such that he lied to Congress that they were allowing aid into Gaza when he knew they were not, just to continue these arms transfers. Open and shut case. We know what is happening and we refuse to do anything about it. And it will only continue as we have seen in Lebanon. Thank you.
Any other members of the public wishing to make public comment?
My name is Eleanor Schwartz. I live at 46 Concord Street.
Can you just turn the mic so it's right toward, because then we can hear it and everybody else can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. 381 days ago, on October 7th, 1,200 innocent Israelis were slaughtered and 201 people were taken hostage by Hamas terrorists. 380 days ago, one day after October 7th, on October 8th, protests started in many countries celebrating and justifying Hamas and these heinous acts and blaming Israelis for all of this. The name-calling immediately morphed from colonialists to Zionists to Jews. This is anti-Semitism. Jonathan Greenblatt, the director of the Anti-Defamation League, wrote, "There have been over 10,000 anti-Semitic incidents since October 7th. 10,000. This is by far the highest number of incidents in the U.S. that ADL has ever recorded. Anti-Semitic bomb threats against synagogues, assaults against Jewish students on campus, harassment online and in once quiet communities. Similarly, angry and dangerous incidents have been taking place around the globe at the same time. I am a Jew, a member of the people Israel, Am Yisrael. Even though I have experienced only a few instances of anti-Semitism, its current prominence and acceptance are gut-wrenching. I feel safe in Nashua. I appreciate the efforts of this committee to represent the Palestinian and Jewish citizens. However, I fear that the impact of this resolution, were it to pass, would be to encourage and legitimize anti-Semitism. Please defeat it. Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Before I start, I want to say thank you to everybody here and to the full board for, even though we don't always agree, for your service to the city of Nashua. You helped to make it great. My name
If
is
you don't mind
Jen.
starting with your name and address?
I'm sorry, I can't.
Name and address is
Oh,
all he's
I'm
asking for
sorry,
the
yeah.
record.
We're attempting
It's-
to do the 3-minute recording.
Okay, sure. It's
Alderman Kelly will give you
Jetta
a prompt.
Darrow, Nightingale Road, Nashua, New Hampshire. Do you need me to spell Jetta?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, cool. So week after week, I have listened to dishonest rhetoric that encourages anti-Semitism in our city. The fact is, on 10/7, babies were tied up, thrown into ovens, and burned. Women were raped until they bled and paraded in the streets of Gaza, where citizens spit on them and kicked them. A Holocaust survivor was shot point blank in her face. 1,200 Israelis were murdered, with American and Israelis taken hostage. I know this to be a fact because Hamas wore the body cameras and released the footage. These are terrorists, the self-proclaimed enemies of America. They call for our death as well. Do you understand that the gentleman who stands before you every meeting is a self-proclaimed director of an organization that actively recruits poll workers and voters under 50? Do you know that you are giving him a platform to express his slanted views to future recruits? Alderman Lopez, did you agree to his support, to support his anti-Israel, anti-Semitic legislation for potential future votes? I wonder. Can we ignore the fact that Israel is our ally and that Hamas is holding and torturing Israeli and American hostages more than a year later? Can we ignore the fact that Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, UAE, and others refuse to do business or banking with these terrorist countries? These are Muslim nations that recognize terrorism, Muslim countries that thrive and whose population increases. Yet here we are with Nashua citizens attempting to glorify Hamas and ignore their actions. Never in 70-plus years has Israel walked into any village, systematically and systemically slaughtered infants, women, children, and innocent men. Never. Are you aware that Israel, in an attempt to build a two-state solution, exhumed the dead from Gaza, never to return? Hamas doesn't want a two-state solution. They want total destruction. Alderman Lopez, it breaks my heart to think that Nashua would in any way support or entertain such a resolution that vilifies the victims here and causes division among members of our community. Please know, my heart hurts for all victims of war. This was a peaceful period that Hamas turned into terror. This could end if Hamas and its citizens would release the hostages, yet they continue to refuse to do so. Moving forward, I would like this legislation
30 seconds.
passed that prevents this type of divisiveness from continuing. I believe that public remarks at every national meeting should be kept to agenda items, and that agenda items deal with subjects that concern Nashua only. There are many issues to be worked on. National politics is not one of them. Freedom of speech does not include hate speech and can be held on any sidewalk in our city. If you must take your misguided agenda, take it to the sidewalks, not our city meetings. In closing, in Israel, Christians, Muslims, Jews all live under the same government with full rights and equal responsibilities. 40% of Israeli doctors are Muslim.
Time is
Tens
up.
of thousands of Palestinians have
Ms.
become
Darrow, your time is
Israelis.
up. If you could conclude your remarks,
Sure,
please.
absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate it.
Okay, is that everybody?
Any additional public comment from members of the audience?
Dana Darrow, Nightingale Road, Nashua. First, let me say that I believe 100% that the citizens of Nashua have a right and a responsibility to address the elected officials with concerns about the workings of Nashua. The Board of Aldermen and this committee has the responsibility to listen to people about the workings of the city. However, week after week, since October 2023, I have watched and listened to meetings being corrupted and co-opted by people with personal agendas that have absolutely nothing to do directly with the workings of the city of Nashua's government. I have watched and listened to a member of this board try to push a piece of proposed legislation that has nothing to do with the workings or the betterment of the city of Nashua. I watch and listen as this body gives the floor to people who have corrupted the workings of this board, individuals who might be considered wearing culturally appropriating garb, which they know is a trigger to many, but could care less. They have their points, and they will make them. Nasty people who spew anti-Semitic, hateful, and divisive, and may I add, often incorrect sentiments for this board to sit and to listen to, which you allow, you don't speak against, and for all of you and Nashua to hear. Yet you continue to push this resolution. I have watched and endured a representative of the people when in actuality he has made it clear that he speaks for only some people. Alderman Lopez, you wrote a divisive anti-Semitic resolution and you take up valuable time from this committee and from the board as a whole. International issues have no place at this table. Many members of this board are trying to work on issues that directly impact the citizens of Nashua and then have to endure listening to culturally appropriating anti-Semitic rants from some of the public. You need to find a way for the citizens to be heard on issues that only relate to the direct workings and impacts of the city of Nashua. You are doing all a disservice by allowing people to take up time in a public forum to advance their personal agendas rather than address the workings and the advancements for all of Nashua. To that end, Alderman Lopez, I want to discuss you trying to make a resolution of anti-Semitic, division-causing rhetoric to appease just a few. Why this? Why now? Are you so blinded by having your name on something that you cannot see the damage that you are actually causing? Where was this resolution during the height of Black Lives Matter? Where is this resolution during COVID with regard to anti-Asian hate? You can't pick and choose how you legislate how people behave, but what you can do is model. Model it instead of wasting valuable city time and resources. Instead of placing a few constituents who want to be the only voice at the table, model good and kind behavior. You can't legislate how people behave. You can and you should model it. As in case in point, our discussion on your public page.
Your time is up. Can you conclude your remarks?
Absolutely. You petulantly and rudely dismissed me when I questioned you. It is obvious that you do not want to represent all of Nashua. But what you can do is be kind to everyone and perhaps reconsider where your stance is.
Thank you.
All right.
That's all. Yeah.
Any further public comment?
No.
Just a reminder, start with your name and your address.
Yep, I am.
I didn't see you back there. Sorry, Rabbi.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm Rabbi Jonathan Spiros Savet. I live at 39 Coburn Avenue. I serve at Temple Beth Abraham. I was not intending to speak. The committee has my verbal and written remarks and thoughts about this at length, and I don't know that I need to add them. I think I will say a couple of things. One is I think that our reason, and I'm a little off the cuff here, that I would like to see this brought to a resolution is because the dragging out over time is something which is not good for our community. And if this can't be done in a not zero-sum way, then if this is an issue that the Board of Aldermen thinks is important, then do something different to bring us together in a more healthy way. And I know that people will want to do that, including from communities who are pained. You well know that I am an opponent of this resolution, certainly something like this in its current form. I am in the room, and I need to stand up for you, Alderman Lopez, as someone who has reached out to me and articulated concerns about the Jewish community, and has made steps to attempt to bring a few of us together on one or two occasions. And I think that there is a big difference between saying that something, as I do believe, might have a sort of anti-Semitic or bad for Jews or bad for other people implications to the community is different from making an accusation of anti-Semitism to anyone here in the room, and I do not, that's not right. And nor should anybody who is in the community and who is taking advantage of the rules the way that they are laid out for speaking in public comment. It's people's right. I can speak about anything I want, as can anybody else. As I say, the rest of my thoughts about the substance are already in your record. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Any further members of the community or public? Seeing none. Communications?
There are none.
Unfinished business?
There are none.
New business resolutions?
We have before us R 24082, relative to the acceptance of up to $610,000 from the State of New Hampshire Department of Safety Homeland Security Grant Program into Police Grant Activity FY25 Homeland Security Grants. I'd like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, and we have a member of the, well, actually, can you identify yourself for the?
Sure. Try to raise this a little bit. Sure, I'm the grant manager at the Nashville Police Department. My name's Steve Hallam. That's kind of deep to follow up with something like this, but I'm here to speak in reference to the acceptance of $610,000 from the New Hampshire Department of Safety Homeland Security Grant Fund. This is a multi-purpose resolution. We have several grants that are covered underneath the Homeland Security blanket. The first one is for $233,684 to fund non-budgeted overtime for the Substance Abuse Reduction Initiative. We received funding for this for several years now, and the funding would be used to extend investigations beyond normal working hours for overtime, identify fentanyl, methamphetamine hotspots in the city of Nashua, and allow detectives to adequately document their activities. The funding would also allow us the ability to continue partnerships with outside agencies and cross-border initiatives that were formed and are strengthened as a result of previous years of the Substance Abuse Reduction Initiative grant funding. This funding is set to expire on June 30th, 2026. Oh, correction, 2025, sorry. Also from Homeland Security, we just received an award letter for $11,867 for electronic hearing protection for the SWAT team. That's set to expire August 31st, 2027. And the remainder of the funds are anticipated to fund future projects. The applications are due in December. Included with this is the continued training of Nashua Fire and Rescue, of Tactical Emergency Critical Care, and Active Shooter Rescue Task Force. Last year, we received $26,800 in grant funds to fund that. We are also looking to purchase regional multifunction UTVs for response to special events, soft targets, mass search and rescue operations, terrorism and active threat incidents. And the previous quote we received for that was approximately $122,000. As well as a tactical emergency medical support vehicle to support the tactical emergency medical support unit for rapid response to casualty evacuation, which we have received quotes for in the ballpark of $200,000. We will be submitting for these projects very shortly.
So as a clarification to that last point, you're describing first responders so they can approach a scene and pull people out without, I mean,
Oh, that last emergency vehicle, yes.
firefighters and ambulances aren't armored, so.
So this vehicle would be armored, yes, and it's more agile than our Bearcat, which is tough. It's slow to get into tight spaces, especially when we need a quick response to a certain location. That would definitely provide the agility to respond to these quicker.
When we talk about response, I think everyone's sort of imagining some kind of like mass shooting event.
Exactly.
But even like a domestic violence standoff where someone might have had a heart attack or something, you need to get a vehicle in there to pull them out, but you don't know what's going on. So
Exactly.
those are other scenarios that might be contemplated?
Yeah, exactly. I should have you write this grant. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. So
We've had conversations in the board regarding these types of equipment, and I thought it would be important to clarify that sometimes when we talk about, emergency management events or, homeland security things, it looks like we're preppers and we're getting ready to build bunkers and militarize Nashua PD, but some of it is very common sense application of you're going into a dangerous situation. You need to make sure that people are being protected as they try to navigate the situation.
That's
Often
it.
that level of protection can make sure people can more effectively resolve it without both sides being so concerned about the outcome that they aren't able to reach an agreement.
100%. It's beautifully said.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, of course.
So question one is this a matching grant or is?
No,
Okay,
no, this is straight funds.
perfect. And the other question I had is in your first scenario around methamphetamines, you said something about borders. Can you
Oh,
talk a
yeah,
little-
so a cross-border initiative, essentially
Yeah,
allowing us, to fund overtime to work. Drugs come from Lawrence, Massachusetts. So it allows us
So
to
it's
work.
literally our southern border.
What's that?
It's literally our southern border.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the southern New Hampshire border.
I was like, what's borders?
Yeah,
Where
I
are we
will
going?
not be going to Mexico
We're Canada.
or north of Canada. Yes.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
And lastly, I respectfully request consideration for recommendation for the Board of Aldermen meeting tomorrow, just so we can get this project started as soon as possible. If that
You're probably sick of me doing second readings, but I will make the motion.
perfect, sounds good. I appreciate it.
Just as a point of order, because Alderman Thibodeau, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Just a point of clarification, the title says State of New Hampshire Department of Homeland Security. Is the Department of Homeland Security the federal program and this is a state pass-through?
Yes.
Okay.
Gotcha.
All right, any further questions for anyone on the board?
Okay.
Seeing none, all those in favor of recommending final passage, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
New business ordinances?
There are none.
Tabled in committee. I like a motion, I'll make a motion to remove it from the table because I believe we can discuss on a motion to remove. Alderman Kelly, can you?
I think we should just remove it and then put it forward for something and then talk about it. All right, so I can move to remove from the table R 24075.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And opposed?
Okay, so then I need to move for final passage so we can talk about it. R
So as a
24.
point of personal privilege, I just want to clarify to those concerned about my reputation and honor. Last meeting, I was getting dinged because I didn't shut off the speaker who was calling for the dissolution of the Palestinian state. So people are pretty strong-minded on both sides. People on both sides are not willing to necessarily entertain discussion with the others. And that is why the resolution was put forth, because we were receiving, as was noted, a number of public comments repeatedly describing very graphic and personally, engaging events overseas. And while it was kind of understood, based on the comments made by a number of the aldermen, that we're local officials, we're not elected to try to negotiate world peace, I did want to try to find a way of acknowledging people for their comments and their opinions, and ensuring that Nashua does remain a place where people can equally express their viewpoints. Because while there is the anti-Semitic viewpoint and there is the pro-Israel perspective, there is also the anti-Palestinian viewpoint and the pro-Palestinian perspective. Throughout the course of this, as this has gone on for several months now, it has been compared to things like Ukraine, genocides in Africa, and a number of other world events. And I have been asked why I didn't step up for those. And I would say probably nobody can really speak to what I have or haven't done without bothering to ask me, because I have generally been pretty involved in any human rights issues, and I think I've been fairly consistent. I have not tried to put city legislation forward, but I haven't been asked to by any members of the public, and we haven't had that kind of public comment consistently made. So where I have residents that are clearly identifying as Ward 4 residents and expressing that they have these concerns and these needs to be heard, I try to create legislation that allows them not only to feel heard and have these discussions as escalated as they can get, but also to try to codify exactly where Nashua's place in these different issues are. And that is one of the things I want to talk about tonight. Because other international issues were brought up, I don't want to, as it has been brought up by the Free Palestine or ceasefire people, I don't want to diminish their experience by removing any references to what brought this about. I, in conversation with the different groups, chose to start with the aggression towards Israel, the attack that was referenced earlier, because that has kind of sparked off this most recent round. But anybody with a basic grasp of history can see that there has been conflict back to the political formation of the entity that is Israel now, and then back literally into biblical times before that. So I had to pick a starting point. I couldn't put the whole history of human experience down in a single note, and I already did use 3 pages on trying to just summarize this. So as a starting point, it was my intention to make the argument that there are international situations where 2 countries or 2 or more parties might become so directly enmeshed that there are international bodies that have been created to address those, and that those bodies are not Nashua. So that is why this is focused on the UN as an entity, as its charter and conceptualization is that it's supposed to be an international intermediary. I identified it as focusing on the Declaration of Human Rights. I think I might have been safer if I literally just put that into the legislation than any of what I did, because maybe people would have understood the principles that were being referenced, and I didn't, and it would have made the resolution even longer. So the first part was to identify that Nashua is a local body, and that there are international bodies that we turn to handle issues when they get too escalated for either party to back down. I also identified that we have elected federal officials who are supposed to be working on foreign affairs and are supposed to be transparent in their decision-making and their reasoning. And I did identify that there were a number of our own current administrations who have expressed concerns over how that's being applied as part of the transparency process. As elected officials, we all hold to transparency. We all espouse that here's our budget every year, this is how money is spent. Here's our meetings every year, this is when we make decisions. Here's the public's opportunity to argue or debate. And so I noted that because we're politicians and we are a political body, we would support that same application as is supported by the US Constitution federally. And then the third part of the resolution was to identify Nashua as a welcoming community in which there are a lot of different communities and people who have come here, whose families or places of origin, they've experienced hardship, tragedy, trauma, and they come to Nashua trying to feel safe. But when these kind of international issues come up, they feel directly involved. They know where the houses are or the neighborhoods that are being destroyed, or they know people who are caught in the war zone. And I think this extends to equal sides of people involved in a war zone. If you have family that is in a place that is being torn apart by violence, you're going to feel connected to them. And so the third part of the resolution reaffirms Nashua's commitment to allowing people to speak and share their truth without targeting groups that we find disfavorable or disagreeable, and identifying them as having less access to that conversation. So I specifically identified anti-Semitism and anti-Palestinian sentiment as things that Nashua does not support. So that was my thinking with this resolution. I think a quick summary is everyone on the board, everyone on the committee here is aware that I did try to bring it back to the full board, knowing that it was likely to be entertained on the day after the anniversary of the October 6th attacks, so I didn't think that was going to be sensitive to the community. I gave the opportunity to indefinitely postpone or make motions, or at least put it on the back burner, and the board sent it back here to be worked on. The last 2 meetings we've had, we haven't had full representation by this committee, let alone any of the board members who voted for it. So we haven't really been able to get much done on it or make much progress in amending it to something that would be at least recognizable, but also acceptable to more parties. So the updates that I've had is I've had some thoughts put forward by Alderman Sennett. He's not here to currently expand on them, but they do focus on recognizing the Nashua as a welcoming community component and dialing back some of the focus in some of the other areas. And I've had some conversations with other aldermen, one of who has suggested simplifying it all the way down to Nashua doesn't support any unconstitutional international wars, I think is a summary. So I am open to concrete recommendations about how to modify this. I just haven't really gotten any concrete recommendations. Alderman Kelly?
So, thank you for bringing this forward. I know that there was a concerted effort to have this put in front of us. I had 2 conflicts, so I was unable to be here for the last 2 discussions around this. But I'm going to leave my comments very short and sweet. I understand that this is affecting people in Nashua, and I have compassion for that, but I agree that this is not under the purview of this board, and that we need to focus on things in Nashua. So I will not be supporting this.
Alderman Thibodeau, any comments?
Yes, thank you. For those who are speaking for, in regards to Tom, Tom was trying to find in my opinion, Tom was trying to find a solution that I believe was amicable in the wording. Now, I am not a member of the Jewish community, so perhaps there are things in there that could be taken in a negative way. I did not see them that way. I'm the alderman he was speaking of. My personal opinion is government has certain tasks, and the city of Nashua's task is not to come up with ceasefire resolutions. So my recommendation to Tom was to keep it as simple as possible, and we, the Board of Aldermen, and the city of Nashua oppose any unconstitutional involvement in foreign affairs. That would be to the level that Nashua should be involved in these kinds of things. From a personal standpoint, I can appreciate that people have friends and family. In my personal opinion, I don't want anybody to die. It would be great if it would stop. That is not in the power of me or any of the members of this board to make it stop. I wish it would. My personal opinion is I believe both countries have the exact same enemy, and if they focused on that enemy, which is the terrorist organization, I think that we would come to a resolution even quicker on the international stage. As thorough as Alderman Lopez's proposed resolution is, I believe it should be taken down to strictly that one well, I guess it's really a sentence, and that is it. And that's where I am. And anything longer than that, I will probably make motion to postpone indefinitely. So that's where I am on this matter.
Okay. When you say anything longer, are you not open to the part that talks about Nashua as a welcoming community, or that section on the end? Do you know what you're talking to?
I don't, and the reason why is that
You want an extra copy of it, since it's 3 pages long? And maybe
I'm looking at it right now.
It's right here.
But I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I would not be.
Okay. Alderman Kelly?
I just wanted to reiterate what was said about, I know that there was intent here to be heard from constituents who were asking to do this, and there wasn't necessarily any malice in you putting this together. And it sounds like you did reach out to both sides to hear their thoughts. So I think in terms of feeling like you were doing the work to hear both sides and put something together was reasonable, you were doing what you thought you should do as an alderman. But I still feel steadfast that this isn't within our purview and that we need to start focusing on other things. However, I will say that I am a passionate person who is of a marginalized community, and I have been involved in things, but not in this chamber. I've been at rallies, I've spoken there, we've had, we've had vigils, but they're not in the chamber, and that's where I have an issue. I hear these thoughts, I understand that we're a welcoming city. It's one of the things that I find I get to talk about with so much pride. I love how our city is so welcoming and so diverse, and everyone's going to have different opinions. There's going to be different things that are happening abroad that are affecting you. And I'm not saying I'm deaf to that. I'm just saying it's not within our purview to be legislating against it. So I wouldn't support any addition here. I would like to move to recommend indefinite postponement.
Okay, well, there's a motion on the floor now, so we have to dispose of that.
Oh, okay.
If we move for recommending indefinite postponement, it has to go back to the Board of Aldermen. We can
Versus,
forward it up there, well, leaving it on the table here.
I was just getting what you're saying there. So do you want to call for the final passage? I did make
I
that
will
message.
probably vote against indefinite postponement as a recommendation of this committee, just because I know Alderman Senate has put work into something, into drafting things. And he did forward it to me, and I don't know why he isn't here tonight. And I do think it's worth considering, at least acknowledging that Nashua isn't trying to, like, my intention behind this was not to try to weigh in on one side or the other particularly. It was to identify that Nashua shouldn't necessarily be taking sides on these things. We were accused multiple times of taking sides on issues in the past, such as Ukraine, because of things that we've done. So I thought we could use recognition that there are international groups and there are federal bodies. And I think at least summarizing that Nashua doesn't support unconstitutional acts is worth holding on to. So, I mean, if I had one or the other, I'd rather just table it again and then talk about it when the members with ideas are here. I think indefinite postponement is the outcome I planned when I pulled it out of this committee and brought it before the Board of Aldermen, and then the Board of Aldermen conclusively voted to send it back here. I don't think we've done anything with it.
So I hear you on that, but it's been sitting on the table for 3 months, and if people had thoughts and feelings and changes, they should have come to one of those.
But
And
if
the
that were
longer,
the case, wouldn't you have?
I was sick.
That's what I'm saying. We can't just assume that Alderman Senate or Wilshire or Timmins are absent tonight in protest because they haven't actually expressed any.
That's perfectly fine. It's not going to change my mind.
Okay. Well, the motion on the floor is to send it back to the Board of Aldermen. Actually,
Would
It
that
was
be-
to recommend final passage is what
To recommend final
that was what I made.
um,
But I'm happy to withdraw my motion, if that makes your life easier.
yeah, I mean, if I make a motion to table, then we can't talk about it any further, so this is where I'm kind of frozen.
I mean, I understand, and I get you wanting to have people to weigh in on it. It's just, it's been sitting on the table for so very long. And you have said to people, hey, we're talking about it this day. If you're interested, please come. And I'm one who is, oh, I can't do that day. That's a day I have something else going on. I understand that. But we didn't get any emails to the committee with any suggestions. Nobody's talked to me about it. So, I mean, I don't think I'm going to change my mind. And I just feel like we're belaboring it, continuing it on the table.
That's fair. Alderman Thibodeau, any thoughts?
Well, my only thought is full board is tomorrow night. So if we tabled it with the intent of removing from the table tomorrow night to give those two members an opportunity to have that last word, would that be your desire?
So we can't do it that way technically.
cannot? Okay.
We can either forward it to the board with no recommendation, forward
Okay.
to the board with a recommendation for indefinite postponement or for final passage. If it's on the table here, there is a way to pull it off the table but that's crazy.
It's
We should
kind of
just-
not fair to either
Yeah,
community.
yeah.
Because if
I
the
wouldn't do
people
that.
representing the Jewish community want to make sure that they're able to be heard, you
Yeah.
have to tell them it's going to be talked about.
Correct. So I think we should pick one of those this evening, or if Alderman Lopez feels strongly about tabling it.
I mean, you're offering me the easy way out here to just let the board overall dispose of it. So it is tempting, but I think if we table it with the intention of making a recommendation, period, at our November meeting, then it gives everybody an ultimatum. You have to show up and speak on it, or it will be gone. And if at the end of the day, people are voting with their feet and they aren't coming to the meeting just because they don't want to vote on it, then I think I'm going on record as saying that we would send it back to the full board at that point with no progress being done on it.
So here's my thought. My thought is that we send it with no recommendation for tomorrow because we have every alderman pretty much full in attendance. And if they want to have those discussions, they know that it's coming.
We just talked about not sending it back tomorrow because it's not going to be on the agenda if it wasn't.
Oh, is that what
promoted.
you just said?
Yeah, so.
I didn't follow that.
But that does solve both problems, to be honest. If we send it with no recommendation, then it wouldn't go to tomorrow's meeting. It would go to the first one in November.
Correct.
And then people have warnings, people have advance notice. All the aldermen are sitting in their chairs and they can literally either, I mean, ideally, they won't send it back to this committee a third time, but they can either give substantive contributions to changing it, or they can postpone it.
Well, and I'm always a proponent of doing the work in the committee, but, you know, it's been several months of kind of laboring in this community and not moving anywhere. So, I mean, I would be for no recommendation, and that gives us 2 weeks for everybody to come up with whatever they might want to do with it, and then we can just talk about it at the full board.
Okay, and for my part, I feel like I am aware that I probably made a mess of it because I am not an international affairs writer, but at the same time, nobody else came up with anything better. And if it took me months of working with people to figure something out, then maybe it is being demonstrated as being beyond our ability to acknowledge even basic truths. I think there are things that everybody agrees with. Nobody wants people to die. Nobody wants children to get killed. Nobody wants, you know, many things. We're having trouble figuring out what we're all willing to agree that we don't want to, and with regards to who. So, I would support that.
Okay, so I'll withdraw my motion for final passage, and I will make a motion to recommend, to send to full board with no recommendation.
Okay. All those in favor to sending it back to the full board with no recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Nay. And the motion carries. We're sending it back with no recommendation.
Okay.
General discussion. A quick general discussion piece on my part. We have traditionally done a lot more working on advocating for cold weather stations, and I've booked tons of nonprofit organizations to present on their programs. We've been doing a lot of joint special committees too, which is covering that exact same ground. So that's why we haven't been doing it here. I do want members of the public and nonprofit organizations that might be coming to this board for funding in other ways, whether it's through CDBG or through the mayor's allocations, to know they can reach out to the committee and present. There was a pretty good discussion in our last joint meeting where I think a lot of aldermen stepped up and said, we really want to push the city on making a resolution for how we're dealing with unsheltered people in the cold now rather than later.
Yeah. No, it's a really important point.
So those are ongoing discussions to be had. I think if anybody knows of organizations or thinks there are new partners that should be in the room, then by all means invite them and let me know so that we can make room for them to present on who they are. That's how we discovered Stepping Stones. That's how we found out what Rise Above and the process recovery were doing. That's useful for all of the other aldermen, but it's also useful for giving those organizations the ability to tell people what they're doing and how they're contributing. And I think that's necessary for people who might be looking for answers.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. Alderman Senate texted me and said that he was sorry. He had mentioned this morning that he wasn't feeling well.
Oh.
You must have not got the email. So
Okay.
we hope you feel better. Public comment? Is that
All right, public comment? Members of the public wishing to come forward and make public comment?
Just remember your name and address for the record. Just name and address for the record, and make sure no, you're fine. Make sure you talk right into the microphone so everybody
Old
can hear
lady
you.
stuff. It's Jetta Darrow, Nightingale Road, Nashua. I just want to finish what I said before, but something that I think Alderman Lopez is missing, it's going over his head, and I don't know why. You are stoking anti-Semitism. That's the most important part of this. There are swastikas being drawn on playgrounds now. If you want to know what it's like to be Jewish in Nashua, come visit me, I'll tell you. I'll tell you how my grandson was told he was smelled like a gas chamber, or they flip coins at him, and administrators turn the other way. I don't think you understand what you're doing with this resolution, and I'm begging you to lay off. So having said that, I'll go back to finish what I was going to. In Israel, Christians, Muslims, Jews all live under the same government with full rights and benefits. This is not the case in Hamas territory. 40% of Israeli doctors are Muslim. In Gaza, no Jews can live there. They're not allowed. They burn the ground where Christians were buried to purify it. These are the types of people that you want to stick up for. Almost 2 million Muslims live in Israel. That's 18% of the population, and 187 Christians live in Israel, all in peace. And Palestinians are trying to immigrate into Israel in very large numbers. The international stuff aside, what you're doing with this resolution is promoting anti-Semitism in our city. It's unnecessary and it's dangerous, and you're going to get somebody hurt. So I beg you, please, to reconsider something that doesn't need to be said. I have marched for gay pride. I have stood up for hate rally, for anti-hate when we've had it in the city, for BLM, whatever other marginalized group I have been there for. And Nashua is a great place to live. Please don't change that. Thank you. And again, I invite you, if you want to know what it's like to be a Jew, even in Nashua, come see me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Rabbi Jonathan Spiros Savet, 39 Coburn Avenue in Temple Beth Abraham. I think I'll make the kind of topic heading of a thought that I hope is helpful and a concern, and if I go past my time, maybe we'll talk about it afterwards. But you know, the election, the big election, is coming up, and this is one of the matters that is charged and is within it. And I want to say that I'm part of, and one of the coordinators of a group of clergy through the Interfaith Council, who will actually be here Wednesday, the day after the election, in front of City Hall, 10 o'clock. Come join us. In the event that things are not peaceful, however things turn out, or if things are not uncertain, and there's just great concern about kind of what the implications of all these issues are going to be right now. And I am very much concerned. I'm concerned on my behalf. I'm concerned on behalf of other communities I probably don't know anybody in, that this format is not good for this issue, where you have the resolutions and the text, but the public input is we lobby you individually outside the meetings and we speak in our 3-minute sessions. And the other topic that was talked about here, you had an expert who you could interview and talk about, and I don't know if you're in the position to do this at whatever the next forum is, but I think if there's going to be a serious discussion about something that could be really dangerous in the community, however, on behalf of any of us who are concerned about this, why don't you invite some folks who will talk thoughtfully in front of the board to have some back and forth, not limited by the 3 minutes, or have these meetings off, you know, at an off meeting, so that so you can hear from any of us, you know, certainly I'm also someone you should talk to or convene a meeting at the temple, go to other places where communities gather, but I think I am concerned about this format getting out of hand.
Any further public comment?
Hello, Nick Scalera, 2 Paddington Place here in Nashua. I would just like to start off, some things were said about me and some of the other people in my group during the earlier public comment. I just wanted to put some questions perhaps to rest. Yes, I do work for a political organization here in the state. I'm proud of my work here in the state. I'm proud of the work that my organization does. We stand up for queer youths, marginalized youths, homeless people here in our state, and I would never trade that for anything in the world. A little bit more history about me. I've always been interested in social justice, human rights. As a slight aside, my dad travels a lot for work. When I was a little kid, when he would have to go to DC, I would bawl because National Treasure was my favorite movie. I've always had a hankering for politics, current events, and history, and especially how we as human beings play a role in that. I, as part of the quote-unquote travel club at Nashua North when I was a student, I was lucky enough to go to Europe multiple times. My sister and I were then able to go to Costa Rica my senior year, and it was amazing. I made lifelong memories that I would never trade, both good and bad, as I'll explain why. My first trip, my freshman year, so in 2015, we did a tour of the Eastern Front of World War II. We started in Germany, and we ended in Hungary. Part of that included going to Auschwitz. I wrote a paper about that as part of my senior, because we also went to the Western Front my senior year. I wrote about it my senior year at high school, talking about the commercialization of history. Because as people may or may not know, Auschwitz has a gift shop that sells books, postcards, snow globes. And I wrote about how wrong that was, about how if that's our supposed to be learning from history, that's not what we're learning. And so when I went to college, I did the same. I wanted to learn more about history. My sophomore year, I was lucky enough to take a class all about Israel and Palestine and all about the social justice within it. It was taught by a wonderful professor who I've talked about plenty of times here, Eve Spangler, a daughter of Holocaust survivors, a proud Jewish woman, and a proud anti-Zionist Jewish woman at that. With her, I took a class trip my senior year to Israel and the West Bank. I saw the apartheid with my own eyes. I saw how the people in the West Bank are not allowed to move in their own traditional homeland. I saw how people have different license plates, different colored license plates based on which side of a line they are born in. The government of Israel, the racial demographics are either Jew or Arab. It does not matter Christian, Jewish, or Christian, or Muslim. You are either Jew or you are Arab. And finally, I would ask people to look up Deir Yassin. It was previously said that Israel had never massacred a village. Deir Yassin was one of the founding villages that was massacred during the Nakba. Thank you.
All right, any other members of the public wishing to make public comment?
Dana Darrow, Nightingale Road, Nashua. Just to reiterate, international business does not need to be held in this chamber. And I will say, what I wanted to end before was, I would like to think that you went into this, Alderman Lopez, with an open mind and heart, perhaps. But when I questioned you on your public Facebook page, and I had some questions for you, you didn't like it. And you told me, and I have the printout if you'd like to see it again, goodbye, and you owe me nothing. You're wrong, sir. You owe me common courtesy, and I think you owe the citizens of Nashua the prospect of you modeling good behavior so everybody can follow it, as opposed to being here and rehashing this yet again. Model it, please.
Any further public comment? All right, we're moving to comments by the alderman.
I'm good.
Seeing none, I will exercise personal privilege since I also get to express things. And first, I would like to express to the public that one of the first steps that I did when I proposed this legislation was also try to refer it to the Cultural Connections Committee. The Cultural Connections Committee is the entity that the city uses to allow citizens to explore these issues and to express themselves. And it does have representation from a number of different cultural groups. The Cultural Committee declined to take it because they were working on their cultural festival. And so we removed the referral, and I pulled it straight back to the board because I didn't want, after not doing that, them to review it in October or in September and then have it referred to the board on the anniversary of the terrorist attack. So I did attempt to create that forum. I also did encourage the Free Palestine movement people and the interfaith community to host forums and discussions. They have not done that. So I do resent, I guess, leaders telling me that I should pick a different format when most of the comments that inspired this in the first place was that there was no discussion and there was no comment from the other aldermen or from any members of the community. And that those members of the community that feel very strongly that something unfair is happening didn't feel like they were being heard. Now, other members of the community have evidently decided that now that they are personally engaged in the discussion, that they can come and use their public comment to specifically target me. That's fine if that's their opinion and that's their feeling. I just don't think it's fair to represent it as more than that. I think this was specifically personal arguments that were put forward. I think some of the comments were misrepresented. The two public speakers were not in my ward, and I don't owe them representation. I explicitly said, I represent Ward 4 and the people who asked me to bring this forward, and I owe it to them that they be heard. The rest of the Nashua community, I'm sorry, but I'm not running at large. I'm not the mayor. I represent my community, and when a member of the community that I represent that has elected me, and these issues matter very deeply to, asks me to at least open the conversation, then I will. Even if that means that for months I'm going to have members of the community who target me because I'm the only one who's actually supporting the conversation. Fine. The rest of the aldermen feel like this is not a matter for the city to address and it's out of pocket when it comes to roles, then they're not going to listen to any constituents who reach out to them, and they have their opinions. I don't necessarily know that public speech and public comment should be limited specifically, and so I chose a resolution, which is a declaration of the city's position. It is not an ordinance or a limiting law. And we've made ordinances for everything from this is the best baseball player in the city to how we feel about certain days of the year. I don't think this is that far outside of that range. I think this discussion has been an important one to have, and I think the participants in the discussion, their behavior can be judged on its own merits. When people come to make public comment and they express themselves, their public comment stands for itself, and I don't necessarily need to get into a debate. But for my personal privilege, when it comes to being able to assert my intentions, my motivations, and my actions, I would say I did reach out to many groups before even offering the ordinance, and then, or the resolution, and then afterwards. And I don't think anybody has diligently picked up any of the slack. I think the Cultural Connections Committee chair did offer at some point to have a forum at some point, and that's not in my purview. That's an advisory committee to the mayor. I, as a former chair, thought that it would be a good idea for them to weigh in. They declined and effectively closed that door to me. So if members of the interfaith community would like to have a forum to better discuss this, then I agree. I think that we need faith leaders there, and I think this format is definitely problematic in that there is you're sitting over there and we're sitting over here format. And as the chair of the Human Affairs Committee, I didn't think it was responsible to have members sit around the horseshoe and discuss it openly, because I don't know how to manage that conversation where one week we have people calling for the dissolution of the Palestinian state. The next week we have people characterizing any and all conversation that isn't pro-Israel as anti-Semitism, and then accusing me of potentially being an anti-Semite. I would point out that I also, well before the Gaza attack, was cleaning out swastikas and white supremacy material from my neighborhoods, not because I had to, but because I take pride in my neighborhood and I don't want people to feel unwelcome. And unfortunately for people who are able to select who they allow to welcome and who they don't, and what causes they're going to show up for, I feel obligated to include people even if I don't necessarily agree with their presentation or their cause. I feel like they should be heard, unless they're specifically targeting somebody disrespectfully and singling them out. And I don't think that's what I've heard. I think what I've heard are people talking about Israel as a country, making a lot of comments about international affairs and what we would like to see happen, arguing that we shouldn't be having those conversations here, but ultimately not coming to any further resolution. And I said earlier, if nobody has better ideas than me, then that's fine. At least I gave it a shot. Thank you.
Shall I move to adjourn?
Yep,
Are you all set?
so moved.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.